Hello.
Hello. Oh my gosh, it's been so long.
It's been ages. How are you?
It's been ages. Great. I refreshed my water bottle.
Great. Oh, that's cute. Is it zodiac signs?
No, it's just like moon.
Oh, it's just moon. Sun.
Yeah, astrology, spiritually. Yeah.
Yeah. Tarot card energy.
Yes, yeah, tarot card energy, exactly. Yeah, Michael got it for me for my birthday. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, for my birthday this year. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And I was sad because I thought I left it somewhere recently. And I was like, oh my God, I loved that water bottle, but I found it. Yeah.
Great. Exciting.
How are you? How have you been in the last 5 minutes? I've seen you.
Good. So good.
You do have the house to yourself today.
I do. It's true. RJ's doing theater all day, so I have nothing to do but chores.
Oh, I was going to ask, what are you doing after this? Chores?
Laundry, gonna do some cleaning, gonna do, some unloading, reloading of the dishwasher.
Fun.
Just little odds and ends. Maybe taking some things over to the thrift store to donate.
Oh,
that we've been holding off on.
What's the thrift store near you called?
It's called Brown Elephant. It's literally like a block over. I can walk it there.
Wow. Do you guys go shopping there a lot then too? Or do you mainly just take
not terribly often.
Oh, okay.
We have 3 clothing thrift stores in 3 blocks of us. Another one just opened.
Oh, is it not a clothing thrift store, that one?
That one, the one I donate to, they take everything, so they resell everything. They have a home goods section, odds and ends, trinkets and stuff. They do have clothes too, but their clothes are of the 3 places by us, they have the worst options for clothes. And then we have a Buffalo Exchange, which is a chain, a thrift store chain.
Yeah, we have Buffalo Exchange in LA, or we had it in LA.
And yeah. And then we have one that just opened, and I think it's called 2nd Street or something like that.
Oh, wow.
That one,
you do have a lot near you.
last week. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
All the thrifty options.
Thrifting.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Ari, this week we read chapter 20 called Lord Voldemort's Request. Ari, what happens in this chapter?
So Harry and Ron get out of the hospital wing. Harry has another lesson with Dumbledore. Is that the main? I guess Ron and Hermione are talking again.
Yeah.
Is that it?
It's just he just has another lesson with Dumbledore.
Yeah, I'm it's mainly the we find out more about Voldemort with the lesson with Dumbledore. That's the main thing of note.
Yeah.
So the chapter opens with Harry and Ron leaving the hospital wing. It's the next Monday. They're leaving the hospital wing together. Hermione and Ron are friends again, apparently, and they're chit-chatting it up now. So Hermione meets them outside the dormitory. And then they're as they're heading to the Great Hall, she's kind of filling them in. Apparently, Ginny and Dean had a fight of some sort. And you already know, yes. I hated that she talked about this slumbering monster in his chest again. I was I
hated it. Ari, I just I hate that she is equating it with this primal,
yes.
unsatiated urge. And I'm
yeah. That's exactly what she's doing there with that.
It's so bizarre. Ugh.
But then women are so bitchy. Young teenage girls are just so bitchy when they have crushes, though. It's just I don't know why she writes it this way. It just pisses me off. So then Harry's what's going on with that? What was their fight about? And then suddenly they come around the corner. There's a little girl who is very scared to see the trio and drops her brass scales everywhere, which makes a very loud noise. Just remember this.
Yeah.
Apparently Dean
Hermione helps pick them up.
Yeah, Hermione helps her pick him up. Apparently, Dean was laughing at how McLaggen hit that bludger at Harry, which this was weird. Ron was like, oh yeah, well, it must have been funny. I was like, are you for real, bro? Hermione's like, no, it wasn't funny, actually. It was really scary because he was like falling out of the sky.
He cracked.
His skull was cracked open.
Harry cracked his skull. There was a cranial fracture. Okay.
Remember, Ron, that you like punched Harry in the head and he was going to let you run all around the school professing your love to Romilda Vane and he didn't? But you're going to laugh when his skull gets cracked? Ugh. So, Hermione's like, no, it wasn't. It was horrible. And then Harry's like, well, that's no reason for, Ginny and Dean to split up. They haven't split up, have they? And Hermione's like, no, they didn't split up. They just had a fight. But why do you care? And Harry's like, oh, I just don't want there to be issues with the team. I don't want there to be any drama.
Such a good captain.
Yeah. It's just because I'm captain, so I'm responsible for everyone. And so, he tries to, and Hermione's like side eye.
I know what you are.
So then Luna shows up and she's like, oh, I have this to give you. And she like does the like Mary Poppins bag thing where she just keeps like taking out like random bits and bobs from her little bag. And then finally gives him the note from Dumbledore. The next lesson is that night. And I was like, surely Dumbledore, you should have like a 24-hour policy at least.
Yeah.
Come on.
Harry could have plans.
Yeah. What if he was doing something? What if he got another detention for himself?
What if he got a girlfriend? He was going to take her out on a nice date to the dining hall.
Yeah, I was like, what would he do? So then, Luna's like, here you go. Here's this note. And then Ron's like, hey, Luna, I really liked your Quidditch commentary. Oh my gosh, it was great. And then she looks at him and she's like, you're making fun of me, aren't you? And he's like, no, I really liked it. I haven't been like that interested in a Quidditch game or haven't enjoyed listening to a Quidditch game in so long. And then he's like holding, I can't remember what it was. He's holding something for her and then is like, what is this, by the way? And then she tells him it's, some very unique, unusual thing and he can keep it. I can't remember what it was. And she's like, you can keep that one. I have more. And then she walks away and Ron's like, you know what? She's really growing on me, actually. And then he like stops mid-thought because he sees Lavender and she is very upset.
She gives him a Gertie root.
Oh, Gertie root. Yes, thank you.
Because it was like a mushroom and a thing. And then she just had loose cat litter.
Everything else is fine. Not the loose cat litter.
Not loose cat litter, girl.
Oh no.
Basically sand. You're just carrying sand around.
In your bag. So then he's like, oh yeah, she's really grown on me. I mean, because he sees Lavender. Lavender's very upset that he didn't tell her that he was getting out this day and that Hermione is with him. She's like, and what's she doing with you? So here we go. This is continuing with the shit that I don't like that Jo writes. So she talks about how then Ron like sits with Lavender begrudgingly, but they don't say anything to each other the whole time.
They're not talking.
But then Hermione's smiling the whole day.
Because she won, Ari. It's a competition. It's all a competition.
Yeah.
For a man's affections.
I hate that like for Harry it's like this primal thing in his chest. And then for the girls it's like this petty bitchy.
It's calculating. It's like
I just don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm like, girl, what are you doing? So,
well, for the boys, it's connected to like their natural male instinct.
That's what I'm saying.
And the girls, it's like, I have to think about how I want to be liked by a guy. And it's like, I'm directly competing with this other girl and I'm going to like turn on the other girl, but not hold the boy responsible.
And even the whole thing of Harry being like, well, Hermione, can you forgive Ron? Or can you start talking to Ron? That it's just like, it's just, there's no responsibility on the boys. The boys can just feel however they feel. And it's just normal and just boys being boys. And then the girls are all bitchy and bratty and, oh my God, so dramatic. And it's so annoying that the girls have all these feelings and everyone has to deal with their feelings and emotions. How frustrating. I'm just like, a woman wrote this shit.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest. I just like her. It's just not interesting. It's not interesting to me. There's nothing new she's saying. She's just repeating tropes. And it's like, oh, Friedrich.
Yeah. Doing his little circles. His little circle.
It's just not interesting. Like she's not taking the tropes and doing anything new with them. She's just reinforcing them. Like it's not, the things I like about Harry Potter are not their interactions in that way. Like it's not the interpersonal lives of the students that make me like this book series.
Also,
it is the magic stuff. No, it's fine. That's all
no. It's yeah. I agree with you. It's definitely like the magical stuff and all that kind of the overarching storyline of Harry's journey and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And blah blah. What she does in this is the boys are painted in a very kind of innocent or like maybe sometimes even like stupid or like an ignorancy, like with the boys. But then the girls, she very deliberately is like making it like a catty thing. Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing that like bugs me because I'm like, well, if you're going to have the girls be catty, if you're adding that layer in that like sometimes happens with teenagers, then I feel like you should have the layer of like sometimes teenage boys are like gross and like icky. But she doesn't do that.
Yeah.
She only does the cattiness within the girls.
The most interesting thing I think Jo does in this book series about boys' attraction to women is the Vila thing in book 4 of like being like they're so base as like a species. Like cis men are so just like fueled by their gut instincts that they can't help themselves.
Yes.
Which I think that commentary I think is interesting, but then she does nothing with it. And by this point in the book series, Fleur, who again we know is like part Vila, is like she's like kind of like an annoying character. Like she's like, oh, it's her femininity that's the problem.
Yeah, that's
and it's
annoying.
Like, oh, okay. All right.
It's just like it's so weird to have one like people would say like the how would I say this? Where you have like negative that's not the word though.
I mean, I think like what I was going to say is like I think it's understandable to write boys as like being, listen, they're all teenagers, they're all horny, like it's what's going on. Like I was a horny teenager and it was like very annoying to constantly look at people and be like, wow, you're so hot and I can't do anything about it. But like my issue is like I just don't like the making it seem like it's something that's like this. It can be an urge and it can be a desire, but equating it with like a monster is so icky to me. As if it's like, that's who men really are at the end of the day. They just simply can't control themselves. But it like excuses men to some degree to being like, well, it's just who they are. Like, that's what I don't like about it. That's what I don't like about it.
Yeah, that's what she's making it. Maybe innocent isn't the word, but that it's just like maybe your term of like they just can't help themselves. It's just how they are.
It gives it an excuse.
Yeah,
instead of being like no.
Yeah, and I guess that's because we're getting it from Harry's point of view, and obviously she's not going to make Harry like a gross like pervy boy because he's Harry.
Right, and like she's not also going to make Harry like this idyllic, like he's a saint either. Like,
no. So she just kind of goes with like ignorant boy that isn't really in tune with his emotions and like is just kind of like oblivious. But I'm like, the thing of like, this was what I was meant to say when I was thinking about. So there's like the toxic femininity of like the cattiness and all that. But there isn't the only like toxic masculinity is just like, boys, they just can't figure out a woman's mind. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like,
yeah, no, she
Girl,
clearly understands the type of femininity that she does not like.
Yeah.
And writes, in this very chapter, it comes back because this memory character is that exact, like, overproduced, like, hyper feminine, dolled up thing that she so clearly finds offensive.
Hates a girly girl.
Hates it. But there is no equivalent on the other side of being like, this is like all of the things that are wrong with the men in this series. And to be fair, almost all the villains in this entire series are men. So it's like, she's not excusing it and saying like the overarching villain of this series is a woman. That's not what the series is saying. But there is not the same kind of,
it's like inherent.
It's more new. She lets the guys be more nuanced in why they are villains, as opposed to like Bellatrix is like evil, and maybe it's because Lord Voldemort doesn't like her like that. Like, who know? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no good reason Bellatrix is a villain, but every other villain has this like theory as to why they are a villain and why they are evil. And it's like, okay, I just like, it's something that really. The whole her hating the color pink is just crazy. I'm wearing full pink right now, by the way.
Yeah.
It's just so fucking irritating because it's like, how are you going to let a color really be that serious for you?
It's also just weird because like, I guess like we know that Snape is like an incel is like what we say, but like that's the only character that has like that kind of vibe. And it's not even her just like outright saying that.
Well, and he's a good guy at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a good guy. And I guess that's what I mean, that I'm just like none of the other than Voldemort, just like we've discussed how he can be like he is this way because of the whole love potion. And that's just he was just predetermined to be evil, and that was always how it was gonna go. There was just like no other chance for him. But any other character, I don't know. It's just like, yeah, I don't know. I should probably just stop talking about it. But there is something that is just so sexist in how she writes like women having, or the girls having feelings and kind of how they react with those feelings and how she writes it. She's very judgmental of how the girls are. But with the boys, it's just like, oh, but boys will be boys.
Yeah.
They're
just too dumb to know.
You can cut out everything else I said because that is what I have been trying to say this whole time.
Yeah.
It's just so clear, and it gives me the ick every time we get into something like this. Like, she didn't have to have Hermione like smugly being like, but she did.
Yeah.
And that Harry is catching her. Do it. And that it's like an ugly part of Hermione. He's seeing this like ugly side to Hermione. Like that's how it's written.
Yeah.
I just don't like it. And I'm not saying that teenage girls can't sometimes do that. Like they do. But there isn't like a weird moment of like teenage boys having something like that. It's only the girls.
Right. And it's like it goes back to this thing of being like, it feels like the girls are so calculating and like how, like he's so shocked at how passive aggressive Hermione's being in front of him, blah, blah.
Yes.
Like it's all like, it's a game for the girls where the guys, it's just like, these are their real feelings because they're just men and blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
But Ron is also making all these choices to piss off Hermione as well. Like he's not. Yes, he's making out with Lavender Brown because it feels good, of course. Like, we understand. It's nice to make out with someone, sure. But he's doing it purposefully to annoy Hermione as well. He doesn't actually like Lavender Brown. I
mean, he might like her physically. Way, but that's what I mean. That I'm like, and so that's not seen as calculated, that he's basically just like making, and that's what I mean, that I'm like, she goes out of her way to show that how the women are is so calculated. But the boys aren't calculated at all. Not at all. I'm like, no, you don't get to do that. You got to have it be like mixed on both sides. Girl.
Well, the girls are so calculated with their emotions that they're literally creating love potions. Like, there is not a single male character in this book series that makes a love potion to catch any girl. That is not referenced at all. Because men don't care about love is allegedly what is supposed to be the belief.
I guess.
The overarching,
I don't know.
The overarching idea of love is only regarded in terms of like maternal love from Harry's mother to him. And then like the love that at the end of the book series, the love that Snape still harbored for Lily. That is the only like example of like love from a man to a woman in like a romantic sense.
Yeah.
That is really like, I should say that's explicit. There's obviously implicit love that's happening. There's familial love. There's obviously like platonic love that these characters have as for their friends, blah, blah, blah. But like the examples where it's like the word love is in it. I only bring this up because the conversation that Dumbledore and Voldemort have in this chapter
is all about
about love.
Yeah.
And I do think, listen, she wrote a children's book series. It's a TYA. I understand. It's going to be a little like unnuanced in that way. Like the idea that everything is solved by love is like, it's perfect in book one. Yeah. And by this point, when you're like, as you're aging with the books, you're like, I mean, sure. There's, I think, other things going on just beside, like you can have love and also make mistakes. Like I don't, love is not implicitly a pure thing, right? Yeah. Like, I just think like even Snape is like with his whole, he loves Lily after all this time, always. Fine. Maybe you loved her, but your love for her did not save her. It didn't do anything, and it didn't like help her, and it didn't care. Like it doesn't, you don't actually love her. Ugh, it's so annoying.
Because it's like, if you really did love someone, it would be sad to see them end up with someone that isn't you. But it's like, wouldn't you still, you love them, so you would want them to be happy in the end because you love them? I don't know. It just is like, it just pisses me off. And I think because it is a children's book, or it started out as a children's book and became this big thing, that's why it upsets me even more, because I just think about like, I'm like, oh my God, this was messaging that was sent to so many Harry Potter fans that this was just like normal.
And it's just, it doesn't, the first book, probably why I still like the first book the best is because it just doesn't have any of this. I mean, it's the most reined in of all 7 books. It's the most like, here's just the story she's telling. She's not trying to like add on these extra like.
Wait, which one? Sorry.
Odds.
Which book?
The first book.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just like, it's tight. It's quick. It gets through it. It is perfectly understood for kids. Like the whole Mirror of Erised being like about desire, I think is like kind of interesting for kids to think about in that way. Like what does your heart actually desire? Like I think that's all interesting. And she doesn't like, yes, there's a bit of like Hermione gets made fun of, but then they learn that like they made a mistake. Like I like that the characters learn from their mistakes in that book. Like Harry or Ron makes fun of her, and then they end up becoming her friend because they realize like they were wrong for doing like saying what they said. Like she's incredibly talented, she's incredibly smart, blah 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 blah. And it just doesn't have all this extra like baggage. That all just starts to come in later. Of course, there's things even in book 1 that are really obvious. Like she still has her fat phobia about Dudley.
Yeah.
Like that's there from the fucking beginning. Of course, like she's going to have the only there's like the mother thing that she like can't get rid of. Like the good characters are women who are mothers.
Yeah.
But I think that still is like of all of them, it's the most like it's just that story of the Philosopher's Stone, the Sorcerer's Stone. Like it doesn't try to do anything. And then as it grew, obviously she had more ideas. She had more thoughts she wanted to put in, and that's totally fine. She world built, there is this overarching plot story that I think is really interesting about like grappling with power and all that and systems. And, I think like indicting the like Daily Prophet, indicting the ministry. Like I think all that in this series is interesting.
Yeah.
But the more she spins, the more she also like adds these things where it's like, but you are thoughtful in some ways and you're not thoughtful in other ways. And I think overall that is the most frustrating part about having grown up with this book series, having liked this book series as much as I did, and her reckoning with who she is today. And
exactly.
It's that I know you can be a thoughtful person, but you are purposefully being obtuse, and that's like the kindest way I can say what she's being. Like you are being an incredible bully. You are becoming Snape to an entire group of people.
Yeah.
Because you simply don't want to reckon with your own nonsense, very binary views of gender.
Yes.
Even though you espouse these views as being like, you're such a feminist, blah, 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 because
that's what I'm saying. That's why it bothers me every time there's a moment like this, because I'm like, you're writing this in the most like non-feminist way, like anti-feminist way, that this like young teenage girl is being described. Like, I'm ready to like flip the page and then we have like slut shaming happening. Like, it's just like, it feels like so close to that. So I just get sick of it every time. I won't talk about it anymore though, because there's more to talk about in this chapter, but sorry. Did you want to say anything else though, before we move on?
No, my biggest thing is I just hate I hate how much she hates femininity.
Yeah.
Because I've always believed that homophobia, especially when it's directed toward gay men, trans women, anything that. It is simply, at the end of the day, it is just misogyny.
Yes, it is. Their homophobia and misogyny are like two peas in a pod.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
I fucking hate it. I hate it so much.
It's just this idea is femininity is seen as inferior for whatever reason. And I'm just like, all right. Hermione's in a good mood the whole day. She even looks over Harry's homework in the evening, which like apparently she said she wasn't going to do. And by looking over, we mean finishing his homework for him.
Right. Because she wasn't checking his work while her and Ron were fighting, because she knew that Harry would just show Ron his answers.
Yeah.
And these people want to be Aurors.
But again, this whole idea of like, oh, I'm going to be nice to you, AKA do the labor of your homework for you. I just hate it. I hate it. So then Harry's like, I got to go see Dumbledore. So he's like, on his way up to Dumbledore's office. When he gets there, he knocks on the door. And then when he goes in, he sees Trelawney is in there.
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, this is why I'm being thrown unceremoniously from your office, because he's here. And Dumbledore's like, you can tell Dumbledore's just like kind of like tired. He's like,
yeah,
no one's throwing you out, girl. He has an appointment with me.
Diva.
And like, very much that. He's like, Harry has an appointment with me. So he was always going to be here at this time. So I have to talk to Harry now. Sorry. And then he's like, also, there's not really much more to say on like what we were discussing. Like, I don't really have anything else to add.
The conversation's over.
Yeah. And then she's
I'm not getting rid of Ferenz, and I'm not getting rid of you.
Yeah. So then he's like, Trelawney is like, okay, fine. Well, if you're not going to get rid of him, I guess I'll just have to look elsewhere for a job.
She says, I'm going to find a job at another school. To my understanding, this is the only wizarding school in the British Isles.
Where are you going to find one, girl? Please,
are you going to learn French? Where? You're going to go move to France and work at Beauxbaton?
Yeah, Beauxbaton. Durmstrang? I don't know. I was like, what is happening, girl? So Harry's like, oh, and also I should mention that when she goes down the stairs, she like stumbles over her shells, which is funny to me.
Yeah. Well, because she's still drunk. It's the weirdest character change.
Yeah, I don't know why the Sherry thing came into play.
So bizarre. Yeah.
Because she's a single unmarried woman. She's just turned to alcoholism. She doesn't have a man.
Because she doesn't have children.
Doesn't have children or a man. So, she's taken to the drink. So yeah, Harry's like, oh, she's not happy that Firenze is still here, huh? And Dumbledore's like, no, she's not. But I can't very well send Firenze back into the forest. Obviously, he's like banned,
excommunicated.
Yeah. And then he's like, and also I'm not gonna like just let her. I can't really tell her that she's the one that made the prophecy about you and Lord Voldemort.
Yeah, but so this is my only question. Right. But also, like, I don't even know. I think it seemed like his fear was like, if I let her go, Voldemort could get her. But does he know she's the one who?
Yeah, does Voldemort know she's the one that made the prophecy?
It's Trelawney?
Well, I guess Snape did. Snape is the one that overheard the prophecy, and so he probably did say it was Trelawney. Excuse me, because he knew Trelawney, obviously.
But then if this whole book series, especially this book specifically, is predicated on people having memories that we just dive into, I feel like Trelawney should have been better protected up to this point. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's only now that we're bringing up that, like, there's, like, a potential... Okay. At the end of book 5, he needs that prophecy so bad.
Yeah.
That he like... busts into the Ministry of Magic.
Does everything.
But like now we've learned that you can like legilimens out people's memories out of their head.
Yeah, you can just get any memory you want and keep it in a little vial for yourself.
We know Voldemort is an accomplished legilimen. The only reason would be maybe because she like goes blank. She doesn't remember the prophecy. But then I don't even know what is her... Then why not let her go? I mean, like, of course, to protect her, right? Like, we don't even want her to get into a situation where she could end up with Voldemort and he doesn't get what he wants from her because he would definitely just kill her. But
then when Dumbledore when Dumbledore isn't a part of the picture anymore, Trelawney is still at Hogwarts
for whatever reason.
Nothing happens to her,
right? And obviously,
should have like gone into hiding or something.
Right?
Yeah,
we don't know. I mean, there's some stuff about Hogwarts that we fully lose out on in book 7.
But I mean that she is definitely still there, and technically Voldemort could get to her, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just at that point he's like, I don't care, but I find it unlikely that he wouldn't still try to get out of her what the prophecy was at that point.
Yeah.
So she should have like gone into hiding or something. Anyway. So then Albus is like, yeah, you know, I can't just like let her go out because she'll be in danger. And then he's like, anyway, how have you fared with getting that memory, Harry, my boy? And Harry's like,
my boy.
Harry's like, well, I did ask him after potions, but he said no. And then there's just like, yeah.
And also, and anything else?
And then?
And then what did you do?
Yeah. And I love that there was just like an awkward silence. Because sometimes I really do think, as a person that talks a lot, I think it really speaks volumes when you're
well-placed silence.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just to be like,
okay.
Maybe throw a sigh in there, do a little like,
okay.
Yeah. And Dumbledore's like, you really think you went like above and beyond? You think you really tried like everything you could have possibly tried to get this from him? Exhausted all options. Like he's like got creative. Like you really like went for this.
Mm-hmm.
And Harry's like, well, I did try to take him to Slughorn's office, or I did try to take Ron to Slughorn's office. when he had the love potion situation happen, because I was hoping if he could help Ron and then I could like get him in a good mood, then, you know, I could get it out of him and he'd tell me. And Dumbledore was like, oh, okay, did that work? And Harry's like, well, no, because Ron got poisoned. And then obviously that was like really scary.
A big thing,
yeah. And this is where I think Albus like is correct, because he's like, no, of course. Of course, when your friend was like essentially dying, and you wanted to make sure that, you know, the Bezoar did work and he was going to be okay. Of course, like in that moment or in those moments after, you were very concerned and preoccupied with this. But once you knew he was fine, after you confirmed that he was going to be fine and he was like recovering and you were seeing him in the hospital wing and he was chit-chatting with you all back to normal, I would have hoped that you would have gotten back to the task I set for you. And he's like, Harry says, it's almost like worse. He's like, I just have had other things. And Albus finishes the sentence for him. And he's like, other things on your mind. I see.
Okay. Got it.
And then there's another awkward silence. And
here's what I'm going to say, though. I'm going to defend Harry with this. Dumbledore has said that this memory is probably the most important memory.
Yeah.
But he has not done a good job of explaining why this memory would be so valuable. Which is like, because he could explain, like, I believe, here's my theory, Harry.
Yeah.
I think he has made Horcruxes. We already know Dumbledore knows what Horcruxes are. He's the most accomplished wizard of all time or whatever. Like, he doesn't not know what a fucking Horcrux is. That's how he has the idea in the first place that this whole thing is happening.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
So I feel like he could have been like, I think he's made Horcruxes. Here's the general idea of what a Horcrux is. I think there may be clues from their conversation to know maybe even how many Horcruxes, what he was told about how they work, that could explain how we really get rid of Voldemort in the end. He doesn't do any of that. He's just like, so did you just get the memory? And it's like, well, you didn't make it. I mean, yes, you said it's important and you said it's a big deal and whatever, but like, there's no stakes or weight to the memory other than just like, what's a Horcrux, which Harry doesn't even know what that word is.
Understand.
So like, what?
Yeah. Friedrich. He's doing it. I knew he was going to knock off a pillow.
Like, you could have at least been like, Horcruxes basically fragment a soul, so this could explain how he was able to come back after he killed you, or he should have killed you.
Yeah.
But why he's still here.
Yeah. I also just think, like, Harry just is a teenager and has, like, teenage things going on. Sorry. Like, he just is. Yeah. So it's just, like, it's normal for a teenager to not take it as seriously as you would want them to as an adult.
Right.
Because they just don't get it. They don't get it. You've been a teenager before. They have not been your age yet.
Right. Because, okay, so he does it. He asks Slughorn about the memory the day after his meeting with Dumbledore.
Yeah. And
he has a meeting that night. The next day he goes to potions. He has the thing with the Bezoar. He calls him cheeky. He says after class, asks him for the memory. He says no. Then, pretty much right after is Ron's birthday. Because the Bezoar's in the same place that it was placed from when Harry used it, blah, blah, blah.
No. Wasn't that the chapter where there was like a time jump? Like a whole month went by.
Let us look. Let us pray and let us look.
Because I remember, wasn't that was the chapter where it was like, unless I'm misremembering, but I thought that was the one where there was like a time jump. Because I remember I was saying like, oh, we went from like January to February to March.
We know that Ron's birthday is like March 1st.
Yeah. I'm confident that this was the one where it was a jump. And I do think if Harry hasn't seen Dumbledore in a month and he's essentially has like that one try, that he should have tried harder.
And it's been a couple weeks since Ron's birthday. It's probably mid-March.
Yeah.
Mid to late March.
But yeah, I do think that Dumbledore needs to communicate with him more, which is going to be something we'll probably be saying a lot in like book 7. We'll be like, why didn't you talk to him more? So there is another awkward silence. Harry's kind of like sitting, feeling very ashamed for a few moments. And then he's just like, sir, I'm really sorry. I should have prioritized it more. Like, I do apologize. I should have taken it more seriously. And then Dumbledore's like, thank you for saying that. This is very important. So I do hope that you like prioritize this moving forward. And then Harry's like, I will. I absolutely will. I will get that memory for you. And so then they basically are just like, all right, anyways.
No plan, no idea of a plan, no like offering suggestions from Dumbledore. I'm just like,
I have concepts of a plan.
Concepts of a plan, nothing going on. It's so fucking annoying. Anyway. These are the parts when Dumbledore really bothers me. Because it's like, you don't need to be cagey.
Just help him talk. In some way. Like, give him a hint.
Jesus.
So they basically kind of like go over the memories that they've previously watched. It's kind of like the little like recap of what they've already seen. Dumbledore's like, I have 2 more memories I want to share with you today. This first memory is from a house elf named Hokey, who worked for a witch named Hepzibah Smith. And then Albus, sorry, I always write Albus instead of Dumbledore because it's just easier to like write out Albus quickly. Dumbledore says that Tom Riddle, because he's still Tom Riddle at this point, Tom Riddle started working at Borgin and Burke's after he left Hogwarts, even though tons of people, including Slughorn, like recommended him to get a job with the Ministry. He didn't want to do that. However, before Borgin and Burke's, his first choice of work was working at Hogwarts. He saw it. This is just Dumbledore like theorizing at this point, because obviously we don't have any confirmation of this. Dumbledore theorizes that he saw it as a useful recruiting ground where he could begin building his army.
Ew!
It's so crazy though, Adam, because like this is what the Ministry thought Dumbledore was doing. Like this is what and I'm like, y'all got the wrong person. Like, I'm just
the wrong guy.
Yeah, this is not how you need to be worrying about. He's there to make sure that's not happening. So they end up dropping into the Pensieve where they're sitting before, and this is how it was described in the book. An immensely fat old lady wearing a ginger wig and a brilliant pink set of robes that flowed all around her. She looked like it was like a cake melting or something like that.
A melted iced cake.
Yeah,
a melting iced cake.
Yeah. And I just want to say that I was like, oh, she's wearing a little ginger wig and these like luscious pink robes. I was like, work. And then like immediately Joe's like, oh, horrible. She looks like a melting cake. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That wig could have been a lace front. You don't know.
Yeah. It's so annoying.
So yeah, again,
so irritating.
This woman loathes the color pink.
I mean, hates it. Maybe she just is like, oh, it's not a good color for me. Maybe that's really where it stems from.
I mean, I would hope that's it.
But it's not. We know it's not.
So Hepzibah's touching up her makeup. There's a little tiny house elf that's helping with her shoes. The doorbell rings and they're like, oh my God, he's here. So the elf goes to answer. Hepzibah's like, awaiting Tom. She is in Hokey. Hokey brings Tom into for some reason it said cramped room. I don't know why she insisted on it.
It's cramped because she has so much stuff. It's all the stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. She lives in like a little museum practically.
Yeah. She's like a little like a classy hoarder in a way. She's got a lot of little collectibles and things. So Tom comes into the cramped room. I guess this is Harry noting this, or like the reader, whatever. Harry notes,
Tom Riddle's hot as hell.
Yeah. Harry notes that he looks more handsome than ever.
handsome, sexy.
I just want to say, though, I like when the villain is like a really good-looking man. Because I think that that's way more believable, that people will just be like, oh, yeah, whatever you want. Sure. Like, I feel like whenever they make the villain like, well, she likes to make bad people like, obviously, she likes to indicate that like obesity is somehow connects with being bad.
Yeah, or just any kind of fatness at all.
Just any type of fatness. And I'm like, oh my God, girl. I'm like, no, I don't even think that is like, it's way more, it would make way more sense to me in my head that everyone is just following around a super like hot dude and just listening to him to be like, yeah, because
who's extremely charismatic. Yeah,
that happens.
It's cult leader energy.
Yes, it happens all the time. So I'm like, yeah, that makes way more sense. Not like our culture is horrible to anyone that is slightly overweight. That's just fat phobia.
Or looks out of the norm or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I'm just like, no, that isn't, I just don't think that that's as realistic. Like, and it's also just sad that you're going to make someone like evil because of this physical trait that they have that like a lot of times people don't have any control over. So,
well, and that's the beauty of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, is that the disfigured character is the most virtuous.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of wish, I understand why Voldemort ends up turning into a snake, but I want to go on record saying I think it's more interesting. Like in Sarah J. Maas's book, she always has the villains be like in the most beautiful human body possible. Like almost like it's too beautiful. It's like something about it is off. And I always love that because I'm like, yeah, that's the shit that like people would just not question. They wouldn't question it. They would just be like, oh yeah, he's just like so handsome, or she's just so beautiful. Where was
Pretty Privilege.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty Privilege. So Hokey brings in some cakes for Hepzibah. I can't believe this
character's name is fucking Hokey. I cannot believe it's Hokey. Okay. I can't get over it.
I feel like she always gives them like awful names. That's probably a part of it,
Dobby,
though.
Winky Creature.
Yeah, Winky, Creature, Dobby, and now Hokey.
Where's she asks, just like a Charles. Just like
Charles. Charles, Chuck. She brings over some cakes for Hepzibah and Tom, and Hepzibah's like, I just know you love my cakes. I don't think he touches the cake at all. I don't know.
No, he doesn't. No.
And then she's like, how are you? Oh, you look so pale. I just feel like they overwork you at that store way too much.
Can you imagine Tom Riddle eating? Just like, I know when they have the memory of the Slug Club.
Oh yeah, does he ever eat anything?
It's just weird imagining
he never like eats anything.
Current Lord Voldemort out there in the world has to eat, one would assume. I mean, I guess he doesn't really, since he is going to live forever.
Off a Horcrux or whatever. Yeah, who knows? So yeah, she's like, I feel like they overwork you in that shop. I'm worried about you. Then she asks why he's come. And he starts going on about this goblin armor that they want to buy from her. They're basically like they've upped their offer. So they want to give her like, was it like 500
galleons?
Yeah, more for it or whatever. 500 galleons in general or 500 more? Do you remember?
I think it was 500 total.
Yeah, okay. And then she's like, oh, slow down there, or I'll think that you've just come for my fancy little trinkets. You asked him why he came. You literally just said like, well, why are you here? Yeah. It was so bizarre.
He's not here to sleep with you, sweetheart.
Yeah, I was like, he's answering.
He's not here to take you out on a date.
So yeah, she's like, oh, I'll just think, you're only coming here for that, not to see little old me. And then he's like, well, I'm ordered here because of your like trinkets and stuff. Like, I'm just a poor, lowly little assistant just doing as I'm told. And then she's like, well, I'm going to show you something that I've never showed to Burke. Is it Burke or Burke, I think? Yeah, I think it's Burke is the one.
Yeah, I think it's Burke, yeah.
And then she's like, oh, if my family ever knew I was showing this to you, oh my gosh, they'd be so upset. They just can't wait to get their hands on it. So then she reveals to him like a little cup, kind of like goblet-y cup that has the Hufflepuff
cup. Mm-hmm.
It is.
I liked that. A goblet-y cup. I liked it.
Because it's referred to as a cup, but then it also is like a goblet. Do they say both? I can't remember.
Yeah. The handles on it, doesn't it?
Yeah. So she's like, yeah, exactly. So she's like, yeah, I have this cup. I'm a descendant of Helga Hufflepuff. This cup is rumored to have powers, like magical properties to it, but I've never actually really looked into that. I just keep it nice and safe in this little box and take care of it. So he's like holding it. She puts it back in the box, like takes it back from him and puts it back in the box. When this is another part where she's like doing this thing of, I guess this woman is lusting after Tom is what's happening. But Tom is like looking at the cup. And then she is like looking like hungrily at Tom.
At him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now
there's hunger in both of their eyes.
For different reasons.
Yeah.
Now, we do get, in the next book, we get a character that is looking at another. I don't know if you remember this, Adam, where it's like a character is looking at another character with almost this weird like hunger in their eyes. Yeah. Okay. But at this point, this is the only time that we've like had something like this happen. And
is
again,
it's a woman. Is it when Draco and Harry finally consummate their love together?
I wish there was a Drarry moment. But again, she's having a woman do this to a man. I'm just like trying to think, Adam, if other than the Vila, is there ever a moment where she writes like a man lusting after an adult man lusting after a woman? She just like, it does. It's not like it
not
doesn't
in a
exist.
Lustful way. Lust kind of doesn't really exist in this book series. This is like,
but this moment it does for this woman.
This is the only real example of it. Everything else is so like wild. Obviously teenage, very hormonal.
Yeah, right. Hormones, yeah.
And then the Vila is almost like its own kind of magical
weird thing,
yeah.
But again, it's just the whole thing of like, oh, it's so funny when like the men are like liking the women, hee hee ha ha hoo hoo, and then like the girls, it's like catty, or this, how it's like all like lustful and like kind of like predatory.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, girl, all right. Anyways. Then she reveals she also has another trinket that she's going to show Tom.
She's got a lot of trinkets.
Yeah. And this one she bought off of Burke. It is a heavy golden locket with an S on it. Tom Riddle reaches out his hand for it without an invitation and is like, Slytherin's mark right away, knows.
Yeah.
She starts talking about how she acquired it. She says that Burke bought it from someone who must have stole it and didn't know like how much it was worth. And she's describing his mother. And when she's saying this, his eyes flash red while she's talking about his mother. And then she reaches out and takes the locket back to put it back inside the case. Because again, she's saying, I'm just keeping this. This is also told to have like magical properties to it, but I haven't looked into that. I just keep it nice and safe with like all my other trinkets. When she like takes it away from him, Harry like is expecting Voldemort to snatch it right back like immediately, or like, you know, not let her take it back. Cause he obviously feels entitled to it because it's a Slytherin, family heirloom.
I mean, it was his mother's.
Yeah, it was his mother's, true. So he's like, you know, he sees it as his rightful property. And then when she puts it, after she's put it back in the box to like keep it safe, she looks back at him and then is like horrified because Harry is assuming she must have seen that red look in his eyes.
The red thing is crazy to me. The fact that it was literal, I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, is it literal? Because I know, you know, when someone says like they saw red, but that's not how it's used.
No, it's like his, it's almost like this is the beginning of how he, because in the next memory, he's already started to like kind of start looking like a snake. Just in the tiniest bit. Yeah. This memory is like his most handsome. Mm-hmm. And then the next time we see him, he's like, ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. And I also guess I never really understood that he actually is supposed to look like a snake. I didn't realize that his pupils had literally changed.
Yeah, to slits. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fucking gross.
Yeah, I know. He's nasty.
Ugh. Is it because he's become less human because his soul has been fractured? So his human soul has been fractured so much that he's become.
I don't know why. I mean, a snake, obviously, just because of the slithering.
Right.
But it's like maybe because he was drinking Nagini's or whatever it was. Like, that's the only thing I can think of, that it's like he started to take on a snake-like appearance because that's what he was getting his sustenance for.
I'm gonna puke.
I know. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of.
Oh, God.
So yeah, she's like, oh my God, are you all right? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm quite well, and like kind of composes himself. And then she says, I thought, but a trick of the light. And then she looks unnerved. And I just want to say, this is like the most British thing, Adam. Like,
not actually saying what they
think. Just not like, there is a moment that is awkward or like uncomfortable or whatever, but no one will just be like I would literally be like, your eyes were just red. You just had red eyes.
Yeah.
Like I would literally.
Yeah.
And no one does that shit here. It's like, you could literally like, what is it called when you like leave such an obvious kind of a leading statement? You could make the most leading statement possible, and they'll still be like, well, like it's just like, at least we're like older generations. It just cracks me up. Like I'm like, no one will just like outright ask a question. You literally have to just say like whatever it is you're like wanting to say. No one's gonna ask you to like elaborate.
The rules of Victorian polite etiquette really had a grip on that fucking country.
I guess I did see a video recently of an American that moved to England, and she was saying how she worked with these people in an office. And one of her coworkers was like, is the window upstairs open? And she like went upstairs, and then it was. So she was like, oh yeah, so it's open. And like the woman was like, did you close it? And she was like, no. And she was like, can you go back up and close it? And she was like, okay. But she was like, I was annoyed because to me, it was so obvious that if she wanted me to close the window, she would have said, can you close the window? But by her saying, do you know if that window's open? It wasn't just like, oh, is the window open upstairs? It was like, by asking that question, she was trying to ask her to do something completely different. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I don't know why she wouldn't just say that. It. Well, especially because I guess the woman was like actively annoyed with her, like was acting like, oh, what do you mean you didn't close the window? Yeah. But I'm like, anyone, like I say that. I'll be like, is the window open upstairs? Because I want to like vent out the upstairs, or like there could be a million reasons why you're asking, is the window open? Mm-hmm. Especially because heat rises. You could want the window to be open. Mm-hmm. But she was like, and that's the difference in like how we communicate. Americans are very literal in how we like say something. So yeah, I think I was just like, that's the most British thing I've ever read about.
A trick of the light.
Oh, a trick of the light. That's all. Anyways, moving right along.
Well, also a trick of the light is, I just feel like you can't say that without a British accent. A trick of the light.
Yeah. I literally pictured like a woman I used to work with, Dawn, who has like gorgeous silver hair that she used to dye pink. For some reason, I kept picturing her in this moment being like, but a trick of the light. So that's pretty much it. That's like the end of that memory. There's not really much else that happens after that. They leave the Pensieve. Albus reveals to Harry that Hepzibah Smith died 2 days after this interaction.
Jesus.
Hokey was convicted by the Ministry of Magic of poisoning her mistress's cocoa, like hot cocoa, by accident. And Harry's like, no way. Which I literally had the same reaction. I was like, no way. You are kidding. Because I forgot that's what happened. I forgot that like the house elf got blamed for it. I thought she just was dead. And Albus is like, yeah, I see we are of one mind. Just like the last time, someone who had a clear memory of doing it took the blame instead of Tom, because they basically just confessed to the crime. Thinking,
right.
You know,
they had false memories implanted, basically.
Yeah. And like what Hokey remembered was like, oh, I put something in her cocoa, but I guess it was something like poisonous. I thought it was sugar. And so Harry's like, yeah, he must have modified her memory, just like with morphine. And this was weird for me because there's this weird line about how Harry was finally feeling sympathy.
Oh my God, I have to read this. I have the page fucking open.
Yeah, great.
Voldemort modified her memory, just like he did with morphine. Yes, that is my conclusion too, said Dumbledore. And just as with morphine, the Ministry was predisposed to suspect Hokey because she was a house elf, said Harry. He had rarely felt more in sympathy with the society Hermione had set up. Spew.
I can think about 100 other things that would make you sympathetic to this cause, Harry.
This is a valid reason to believe in the cause, for sure.
Yeah.
But this can't be the first time you've believed.
What about Dobby like hitting himself on the head every 5 minutes? What?
No, because that's funny, Ari. You don't.
I know, it's so
that's
comedic.
So funny.
Slapstick.
Lopsy. Jesus.
Yeah, I was just like, are you kidding me? By the time that her family figured out that the cup and locket were missing, Riddle had already resigned from Borgin and Burke's and basically disappeared. Also, I realized that instead of morphine, I think I said morphine, the drag queen. Morphine, our girl Morphine. Riddle had already resigned, and at this point, he just like disappeared. So we don't really know where he is. We don't know what he's up to at this point in time. And Harry's like, that's nuts that he just like would risk all of this, like his job and all that kind of stuff to do this, to get these things or whatever. And Dumbledore's like, it's crazy to you because like you obviously weren't thinking of whatever plan he had in his mind to do. To him, it was like totally worth all of this because he was going to accomplish what we are going to later find out is like the Horcruxes are going to be starting to be created. So
I'm going to be honest. If I wanted to get away with shit, I would make it not a pattern. Like I would be like, oh, I just found a shoe on the street and that's my new Horcrux.
You would get the most random shit.
I wouldn't be like, oh, and then there's 4 Hogwarts founders, so I have 1 for each of them. Like,
but this is where it's like she's really doing the like serial killer.
The taking the
token?
No, is
trophies.
It token? Trophies. Yeah, trophies.
Yeah, so Dumbledore's like, oh, no, this was totally worth the risk for him and what he had planned. So the next memory is 10 years after Hokey's memory that they've just seen. They have no idea what's happened in between now and this point in time, like what this next memory is going to be. This is Albus's own memory. He looks slightly less wrinkled. Both his hands are like intact, unblackened, and it's snowing outside. That's like the only important things to note in terms of like, it's very clearly a different time of year and a different time. Someone knocks on the door. Dumbledore says, enter.
Isn't it interesting that it's snowing?
Huh?
Oh, because he knows someone's retiring? How does he...
What?
Would he come... Wouldn't you show up if you wanted a job at Hogwarts? Wouldn't you come in the summer? It's snowing out.
If it was at the beginning of the new year, maybe you could be like, this upcoming school year, can I be the teacher? I can't remember if they talk about someone retiring in this scene. Do they? I know Dumbledore says someone retired at some point. But I can't
there's
remember.
some lady with the craziest name I've ever heard in my life.
And they were like there retiring. For forever.
Yeah. She had been there for like 50 years or something like that. Oh, look. It's so not important. I'm sorry I'm even bringing it up. Oh, it's earlier in the chapter. In their conversation before the Hokey memory. Which job did he want, sir? What subject did he want to teach? Somehow Harry knew the answer even before Dumbledore gave it. Defense against the dark arts. It was being taught at the time by an old professor by the name of Galatea Merrythought, who had been at Hogwarts for nearly 50 years. Come on, Galatea Merrythought!
Merrythought!
Merrythought THOT. That's my drag name.
A thought. So Voldemort just walks right into the office. Harry like gasps. I wrote this pretty much word for word. His features aren't quite snake-like yet, but he definitely was not handsome Tom Riddle anymore. His features had been burned and blurred. They were waxy and oddly distorted. His eyes had a permanently bloody look, and he was pale. Like pale as the snow outside. The permanently bloody look. Ugh. But see, this is what I mean. That I'm like, I would have been way more inclined to be hanging around with someone that looked like Tom Riddle than someone that literally looks like their eyes are always bloodshot and they're like, got this like whack, especially if they didn't always look like this. They're starting to look like more and more like a monster.
Yeah.
In a magical world,
an actual monster.
Clear.
Yeah.
Like in the magical world where like that is definitely indicating that you're up to no good.
Right.
Because why you're messing around with something that like you shouldn't be messing with.
You don't look like a person anymore, girl.
Yeah. Exactly. You don't look like a human. What?
It's not just like, oh, your skincare routine fell off. Like, girl.
It's just so bizarre to me. I'm like, but you're gonna get more followers with this? You're rocking this new look? Really? All right. Voldemort is like, well, I guess we should say Tom at this point because Dumbledore refers to him as Tom. So Tom is like, oh, I heard you're headmaster now. Yeah, a good choice. And Dumbledore is like, I'm glad you approve. And I was like, this is like bitchy queens. Do you know what I mean? Like him being like, oh, so glad to hear that you approve of this choice. Then he gives him a glass of wine. He's like, do you want a drink? I can give you some wine. So he gives him some wine. There you
go. Men being bitchy, Ari.
The closest we'll get.
The closest we'll get is Albus Dumbledore, the gay character.
Yeah, me misinterpreting a line.
Yeah.
Dumbledore's like, why are you here? Let's just get into it. Voldemort like doesn't respond at first. He's just like sipping on his wine. And then he's like, to clarify, Dumbledore's like, why are you here, Tom? And then Voldemort's like, they don't really call me Tom anymore. My friends call me. And then Dumbledore just interrupts him and he's like, oh, but you'll always be Tom Riddle to me, I'm afraid, just
I'm sorry. Did you think you were going to get a job at Hogwarts and the students were going to call you Professor Voldemort? Like, are you out of your mind?
Also, just like crazy that you would think to be clear, this is the only, like, I if someone was like, this is the name I want to go by, I obviously would always be like 100%.
That is something completely different.
I know.
Lord Voldemort, no one is asking to be called Lord Master. Like, come on.
It's the only time where I was like, slay for someone to be like, I absolutely will not be calling you that.
It actually, when this part of the scene happened, I was like, oh, I've never thought about, wouldn't it be more impactful if Dumbledore always referred to him as Tom Riddle? Like, the whole thing is that he is the one who calls him Lord Voldemort because everyone is too scared to call him Lord Voldemort.
Right.
But like, I feel like you're still then buying into
like he should have always called him Tom.
This guy, just like always,
he does always call him Tom to his face. If he sees Voldemort, he still always calls him Tom, which I like. That's a slay. The vibe shifts right away because Dumbledore has essentially already been like, no, bitch. And then Tom asks to work at the school. He's trying to sell himself to Dumbledore and is like, I've done all these things. I've traveled the world. What's the what is that saying? He's like, oh, I've traveled the world, darling. I've seen all the things you've never seen before. Like, he's just really like imagining this like mid-Atlantic accent.
Oh,
where he's, like,
yes.
going through all the
He's laying
things.
it on thick. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Dumbledore's like, oh yeah, I've heard about what you've been doing. And I'm really hoping that those rumors are not true, actually, because I would dread to think some of the things I've heard people saying about you like are real. And then there's this really weird moment of like,
number one being you're having people call you Lord Voldemort. Like, I want to believe that's not real. There.
So he's like, oh, it's so weird. This is such a weird like response. I should actually find exactly what he says because it was like fucking weirdo behavior. His response. It's like some narcissist shit.
Greatness inspires envy. Envy engenders spite. Spite spawns lies. You must know this, Dumbledore.
Oh my gosh. And you must know this, Dumbledore. Like trying to be like, oh, we're the same. You and I, just like these great wizards in the world. And Dumbledore's like, oh, I wouldn't. Oh, well, he does say the bit about like, oh, well, you've looked into some kinds of magic. He does say that bit that he's like, not really. But he's like, you call that great? You call this great what you've been doing? Mm-hmm. That's the word you're going to use? And he's
terrible.
Like,
yes.
It's so.
But great.
Yeah. It's so dumb too, because then he's like, I've pushed the boundaries. It's like, I've broken a few eggs, certainly. But I'm doing it. It's the whole like,
but I'm making the omelet.
Yeah. It's like, but I'm gonna make the world a better place. Like I'm gonna bring more order to the world. Blah blah blah. All this bullshit.
Hi, that's fascism. Hi,
yeah, literally.
Welcome. That's the definition of fascism.
And then just basically trying to do the whole like, they're just jealous, They're just jealous of all this greatness I'm accomplishing. So then he's like, Dumbledore's very much like, I'm sorry, I just think you're still ignorant to like the real powerful magic in this world that you just don't even take any interest in. And then Lord Voldemort is like, oh, you mean like love? I know you've said that. Yeah, haha, but I just still don't really, I'm not selling what you're buying with that, Dumbledore. And then it's weird because he like pivots. He basically says like, I'm not selling what you're buying. Dumbledore's like, well, you haven't been like looking in the right places. But then he pivots to be like, well, why not start looking here at Hogwarts? And I was like, I'm sorry, you have to do a better job of selling yourself. That did not work at all. That did not work at all.
Because Dumbledore's argument is like, love is the most powerful magic of them all, blah, blah, blah. And Voldemort is like, everything I've seen indicates that that's not true. But then, pivots to be like, but I guess maybe I could find out if it's true here at Hogwarts. Hey, bud, if you want a job with minors, don't say maybe you can find how love exists at school. I just feel like maybe that's not gonna get you the job, my bro.
Not gonna get the result you think you want.
Not a winning argument. I gotta be honest. It's not putting your best foot forward in the interview.
Yeah, it was just so weird because I was like, there was nothing that you said. I mean, he was never going to give him the job in the first place. Obviously, we know this, but like, I was like, that was how you were gonna like get your last pitch in. Yeah. So then he asked to come back to the school. He's like, will you let me come back? Will you let me share my knowledge and what I've learned with the school? And then Dumbledore's like, what'll happen to your followers? What'll happen to them? And he's like,
what they're called death eaters.
And then it's clear that Tom like didn't expect this. And so he's like, looks a little bit taken aback, but like quickly recovers and is like, my friends will carry on without me. They'll just keep doing whatever they're doing. And Dumbledore's like, oh, I'm glad you consider them friends because I thought they were more just your followers. And then he goes through and name drops all the ones that are sitting in the hogshead waiting for him. And I was like, this is savage. Literally.
So if I was to walk over there right now, I wouldn't see McNair and Dolohov and
Rosier. He like name drops all of them. And then Dumbledore's like, you're as omniscient as ever. And Dumbledore's like, no, I just know the barman, which remember,
we don't know at this point, but we
don't know, but we will.
We're going to put it in our cap.
And then, he's like, they're over there waiting for you. I know it. And then Dumbledore's like, cut the shit. Let's get real. Why are you here? Like, what is the reason for you being here? Why are you coming in here and asking for a job that we both know you don't want? And Voldemort's like, on the contrary, I actually really do want this job. And then he's like, if you don't want to give me the job, though, that's fine. And Dumbledore's like, no, of course I don't want to give you the job. And so then Tom is kind of like the demeanor, the very nice demeanor just like falls away. And he's like, all right, fine, blah, 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 whatever. I guess we're done here. And Dumbledore's like, yeah, he like sadly, he says, yeah, I guess we are. The time is long gone where I can threaten you with a burning wardrobe. And then he like turns his back to Voldemort, and Harry's like, don't do that, because he thinks like Voldemort's gonna try and like hex him or something, curse him, kill him, whatever. He just has this, this like panic when he sees Dumbledore turn his back to him.
So funny because he didn't get killed, Harry. He's next to you. That's how you know that the memory is with us today.
He's still here.
He's actually just holding his hand.
I'm not gonna lie.
Hand.
I think it would have been. I know it would have been. I guess like it wouldn't have made sense for him to try something with Dumbledore, but I feel like it would have been really badass if Tom almost like reverted to like, if we got a moment of his like child self almost like throwing a fit or like having a tantrum with Dumbledore, like trying to throw something or like cast a spell at him, and Dumbledore just completely like blocks it. I know. I mean, I think that's maybe just like for that it would have been like a thrilling moment that I wanted that, but I was like, it just would have been cool to see one last moment of Dumbledore. It's still being clear that Dumbledore is like more powerful than him, and like there's a reason why he has always hesitated to face Dumbledore.
Yeah,
I just thought that would have been cool. So I was like, I feel like
the memory ends anticlimactically.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's just like they're just like walking away from each other. So I was like, oh man. So they leave the memory. That's like pretty much it. And then that's pretty much it with their lesson. It's kind of just like the end of the lesson. Harry goes to leave. Dumbledore's office, and then turns around and is like, so it was the defense against the dark arts position he wanted when he came back, wasn't it? And Dumbledore's like, oh yeah, it was definitely that position because we've never been able to keep a teacher for more than 1 year ever since I refused the position to him. So, Adam, did he actually put a curse on the position? Like he actually did some magic around that? Or it's just like a superstition thing?
That's what I wondered. It's because I wondered if there was a way to curse the position itself, Voldemort. But that doesn't seem like that is how magic works in this universe. So then I was like, maybe it's just happenstance. But then I was thinking, how many years has this been? Because this is clearly before the Great Wizarding War.
Yeah.
Is this even before, are James and Lily at school when this happened? Because, James and Lily die a few years, maybe 3 or 4 years after they leave Hogwarts.
And Voldemort was born, don't forget, in 1926.
Yeah.
So
when
would he have graduated? Yeah, let's actually do the math.
Okay,
there.
So 20 years is 46. He graduates when he's 17. So he would have graduated in 43.
1943.
And then he goes to work at Borgin and Burke's. So let's say he does that for a year.
When that was right out of school.
It was right out of school.
Yeah, so that would have been 1944.
So 44. Then he leaves for 10 years. This is 1954.
Mm-hmm.
Then,
so that would mean at least 30 years.
Harry is born in 80, right?
Wasn't it 80? Yeah, what year? Yeah, 1980.
1980. So then how long?
30. That's 30 years.
54 to 19. I mean, 19. It's 40. It's 40 years of new teachers every year. That's crazy.
That is so long. I know. I had that exact thought. I was like, you're telling me this has been going on for almost 50 years?
Because generously, let's say James and Lily graduated in 76. That's even before them. So they had a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher every year too.
Oh my gosh. How is anyone good at Defense Against the Dark Arts in this world, Adam? Everyone's
how are there that many people after 10 years of there being a new teacher every year? Wouldn't somebody start to be like, people would stop taking the position.
Yeah.
I'm not saying every single person had calamitous experiences like Professor Quirrell did, but
yeah,
I'm sure most of them probably were just people quit or
I just don't. How do you have
some girl got pregnant and she was like, I'm gonna make a family,
I'm wondering if obviously the wizarding world is there's a lot of people living in the wizarding world, whatever. But how are you going to get that many new Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers in Hogwarts is the only wizarding school in that entire country
qualified to teach Defense Against the Dark Arts?
What are the qualifications though, Adam? There probably aren't any. It's do you know how to hold a wand?
I mean, he really had to scrape the bottom of the barrel with Lockhart.
Yeah. I know, it's so weird because
anyone
Lockhart
that
and
replied
then Lupin
to the
is the best ever.
Yeah.
Wow. But also
Moody.
werewolf.
It would make sense that former Aurors like Moody would have been.
Previous Aurors, that would make sense. But I don't think we get any other Aurors after Moody.
No.
Do we even know? I don't even know what other teachers, who the Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers were after. I don't know if there is really any information on that.
In the seventh book, or
it's Snape in the seventh book.
Oh,
or no, it's not. No, it's not. Who is it?
No, it's
the Carrows. Yeah.
Because it's dark. The class is like dark arts now.
Yeah, because
there's no
Snape
defense.
is headmaster.
Offense of dark arts.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I should look into if there's any like Pottermore info on who was the teacher afterward. I saw there was like a fan canon that Harry became the Defense Against the Dark Arts for professor, and I was like,
no, I don't think he'd be a good teacher.
I
guess he teaches in DA.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he would have to like emotionally mature a lot for me to think he would be a good teacher.
He would have to stop looking at each house as being like, oh, none of the Slytherins are good people.
That as well, yeah.
Stop doing that at some point.
I think he's better as an Auror. It makes sense.
He would be a very bad head of house. I would say that.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it. That's the chapter.
That's it. It ends not with a bang, but with a whisper.
Yeah, I wish that. I don't typically say stuff like that either, but I do kind of wish there would have been like an attempt at a confrontation where Dumbledore came out on top. I mean, there is in the sense of he doesn't get the job, but I meant like a magical confrontation.
Right. Well, that wraps up this chapter. Next week, we'll be reading chapter 1 called The Unknowable Room.
Chapter 1?
Chapter 21. Oh, sorry.
No. I don't know if I heard one incorrectly. I won't know until we look at the recording. I was like, chapter 1?
Chapter 20. We're going all the way back. Yeah, I don't feel like I know the book well enough. We got to go all the way back.
Or skipping ahead to book 7.
Yeah,
chapter
book 7.
Book 7.
Nothing else happens in this book.
Nothing of note.
We have a comment from Spotify. Don't forget, you can leave comments on Spotify, guys. Noelle says, hey, love your podcast. Been following for a long time. In the chapter over Christmas, the very frosty Christmas, Lupin also points out that there are no wizarding princes, and I thought that was interesting. Certainly deepens the political lore and further complicates it. What do you think?
Yeah.
What do we think about the royal family?
Well, I guess, yeah, because they're obviously the royal family is such a big thing in British culture. Well, I guess English culture specifically.
It's a constitutional monarchy.
But even within Scotland and stuff, they go to Holyrood often enough. And that's where Elizabeth II's like funeral service was in Edinburgh, wasn't it? Or at least there was like some type of special service in Edinburgh for her. But yeah, I don't know. I guess they just, in the magical world, like it is interesting because we do have like, there's a class divide, but no royal family at all.
Which is interesting because historically the British ruling class was based on titles because of nobility.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't necessarily the monarchy itself, but it was like titles given from the monarchy.
Yeah. Because that's what you would think like the Malfoys was like their family used to be like dukes and duchesses or something.
Yeah.
But
a baron or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because like the Magna Carta is like 16 something, I want to say, or like 15 something. And that's when it establishes Parliament. But I mean, if the Ministry, what existed before the Ministry of Magic? Or is the Ministry of Magic a more recent thing once there really became like a fight between Muggles and Muggles and wizards? Yeah. That they couldn't cohabitate. Yeah.
And it just is interesting that you would think the class system would have come from like what you were talking about, titles being promised and stuff like that in a similar way, because that's obviously the history of the country. But then if there aren't, it's like, oh, well then how is the class system determined in the wizarding world then?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, we could, if you want to really get in on the weeds on that, you can be like, what is it? Is the money system simply just based on like the amount of gold? Like, is it a gold based currency?
Yeah.
Like that's how it's insured based. I mean,
yeah.
we're not doing that, but it is. I mean, it's fun. It's the reason Harry Potter became such a thing is because it's so accessible, because she really is just grafting something on top of structures that already exist. So she's not not reinventing the wheel. She's not creating Middle Earth. Like, she's really just saying, like, what if this was within this? Our world?
Yeah,
but
what if
magic
this existed in our world? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's so easy to digest and like easy to get into, because they already have a basis of knowledge and understanding of it. You don't have to do the like intense world building of like creating a map and doing a thing.
Scratch. Yeah.
Right. But then it is like, if you were to poke at it, which I don't think is like terribly interesting, but if you wanted to, you could really start to ask questions that I think could get fun for sure.
Well, just how would witches and wizards have worked when like Henry VIII was in power?
Well, I think like it's interesting. I think the most interesting thing is like that there's no religion in wizardry, not because necessarily like I just like religion is. I mean, I guess the basis of religion is like you don't have answers, so people just came up with theories of like how the world came about and how man exists in the world in order to kind of make sense of the chaos that is the natural order of things. But I guess if your group of people can change the natural order of things with your own kind of powers, then there's no need to like kind of create. So I guess that makes sense why there would be no. Yeah.
Yeah. They're just like, we're magical beings. We don't need any of that shit.
Yeah. But you know what you do need? Safety protocols. Maybe you need OSHA.
OSHA, yeah.
So thank you for writing in. We love hearing what you guys think. You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts, as well as video versions on the Ampliverse YouTube channel and on Spotify. As always, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so that we can get a perfect Newt score. 5 stars only, or else you'll have to wear a really frilly pink gown and look like a fucking melting iced cake.
No, you'll have to see that the red in his eyes turning red.
Yeah, the red in his eyes. Blech. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at HP Anxious or YouTube and TikTok at The Ampliverse. We are hosted on Spotify for podcasters, so thank you to them and are a proud member of The Ampliverse. Check them out at theampliverse.com. Thank you, Ari.
Thank you, Adam.
And as always, what a trick of the light.
But a trick of the light.